UnBadding, we're UnBadding, baby. We're on a journey, baby. We're UnBadding, baby. We're UnBadding.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of UnBadding. I'm Dana Pereira.
And I'm Jessica Presley.
Jess, it is a big week this week.
Such a big week.
For so many reasons. The biggest being that at the time of recording, you have 2 days before your birthday.
Yes, approximately 48 hours.
48 hours until you end this decade and start a new one.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Isn't that fucking awesome?
It is awesome. And I am going into this birthday just like my heart is filled to the brim. It's overflowing. I'm feeling an outpour of love. Everyone in my life that's close and dear to my heart, yourself included, has made my birthday feel so special already. And I'm just like going into it like on a high note. I'm feeling really great.
So one thing that I noticed whenever I turned 40 was that everybody wanted me to be a little sad about it. They were like, "Are you okay? Like how are you feeling? You're turning 40." And I don't mind the "how are you feeling" question, but I think a lot of people were surprised, and I loved that you did the exact same thing. You're like, "This is fucking great.
Yeah.
Can't wait."
Yeah, it's been great. And, you know, I had some clients on Saturday, too, and they were like, "Oh, it's your birthday. It's coming up. How are you feeling?" And the two in particular that I'm talking about were both probably in their 50s, 60s. And they're like, "Oh, 40 was so great. I loved my 40s. They were so wonderful." And so, you know, it's just further confirmation that like all these good feels are valid.
I think that in your 40s, you really know yourself. And you're in that sweet spot where it's like you're aware of your mortality, but in the long line of life, if everything goes according to plan, you got a long time ahead of yourself still.
Yeah.
And you're at that point where you're like, I'm going to fucking do all the things. You're braver. You're more confident. Like so many things. And I know that your 40s, you have already declared it. It's going to be your, well, you said year of fun, but I'm declaring it a decade of fun.
Yeah, fun 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not like naturally a person who's just like looking for fun. I'm kind of like more responsible. I look at things more like work. I'm like, "Oh, I got to do this, this, and this." And so I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to have some fun. I'm ready to start looking for fun. I want to seek it out.
How about like spontaneity?
There it is. Spontaneity, not my strong suit, but also willing to lean into that a little bit.
I think.
Are you going to make me do something right now?
No, absolutely not. I would never do that to you. But I think like your birthday, you're going to be on a trip with your husband.
Right.
Like maybe whatever's going on, be like, you know what? For example, my husband on his 35th birthday scaled a cliff naked.
Oh.
Jumped into the ocean.
Oh, okay. Like something like just random out of character that I wouldn't normally do.
That would be really, because we still laugh about it to this day. We're like, remember when you turned 35 and you scaled a cliff and jumped into the ocean?
Yeah, I feel like it's a good reminder and definitely something that I'll look for opportunities.
I'm very excited. We are going to revisit this whenever you get back because I want to know what happened.
If I scaled a cliff naked and jumped into the ocean.
Can you get Davey on board with like the spontaneous fun?
Dave is pretty go with the flow and chill. If I'm like, "Hey, let's do this," he is kind of like risk adverse though.
Yeah. He's like on Along Came Polly.
Yeah.
He's like, "Don't step on the grate. There's a 37% chance you're going to die."
100% my husband is Ben Stiller.
Yes.
Go me.
You did it. Wow.
In Along Came Polly. That's definitely him. Although Ben Stiller might have better dance moves.
I don't know. I've seen his dance moves. We did a walk-off.
We did do a walk-off yesterday.
And it was very fun. And I mean, not bad. He did a decent job.
He held his own.
He
He got a little cackle out of me. So he can still make me laugh. Way
Yeah.
to go, babe.
You know what? That was spontaneous.
It was.
We could have very easily, our daughters challenged us to a walk-off yesterday.
Well, I'm going to correct that.
Okay.
We challenged them to a walk-off.
Oh, you're right.
They are constantly doing walk-offs
Yeah.
when they're together swimming. And I was like, we should do a walk-off.
That was spontaneous.
It was. And it was fun.
And it was so fun. We killed it.
We did.
I'm gonna
really
I'm
did.
gonna put that video up on our social
It's
media.
so great.
And seriously, we nailed it. If there was a winner, I think it was us.
I mean, there was a winner and it was us.
Yeah. The girls challenge that though. They don't believe that we were the winners. But I watched both of the videos and we won.
Video doesn't lie. It's all right there. The proof is right there.
Right there in the pudding. So that was the first thing that was like, wow, this is a big week.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing was we've been talking about doing an episode.
Oof.
And it's a big one.
Drum roll.
All around.
Mm-hmm.
UnBadding. In particular, Christianity, because that is what we mostly know.
That was our childhood. That was our upbringing. That's what we're familiar with. You know, when we first started talking about it, we kind of like approach it as religion as a whole.
Yes.
But as we kind of more dug into the episode and we're thinking about the things that we wanted to talk about, we realized that our direct relationship with religion was through Christianity and through
Yes.
Catholicism.
Yes.
And so a lot of what we're going to talk about is going to kind of be specific to that.
Mm-hmm.
But religion as a whole, I feel like there's a lot of common denominators.
There is. There's a lot of overlap with some of the belief systems and stuff like that we are going to get into. But it wouldn't be right for us, not having direct knowledge of those other religions, to actually speak on them.
Sure. And I mean, let's be honest, Christianity is the largest religion in the world.
And that's what, I mean, most of the people that I know, they're like Jewish or Christian or Mormon. That's it.
Yeah. Maybe some Muslim in there. I know a few Muslim people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a big week. It's something that we've been kind of like tiptoeing around. We knew that we wanted to do it. We were feeling called to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a touchy subject.
It is.
I don't want to disrespect anybody's belief systems. I don't want to disrespect anybody's faith.
That's not what we're here to do. We're not here to say that one person's right, one person's wrong. I think that it's just an opportunity for a conversation, and for us to say, like, we, having been brought up in this particular faith, have noticed some things that seem problematic, and hear us out, maybe.
Yeah, stick around, listen to it. If it's something that you're feeling a little triggered by, I always like to dig into my triggers and ask myself, why is it that I'm feeling this way? But this really, it's exploratory. You and I are exploring how religion had an influence on our lives, has had an influence on the way that we carry ourselves, even still to this day.
Absolutely. And again, I really want to make it clear that we are not trying to put down anybody's faith. I think faith is fucking awesome.
Agreed.
It has helped so many people through so many tough times. I think that it's important. I think that it is, very, I think it's enlightening for a lot of people if you have something to hold on to. And that's what faith basically, that's like the whole definition of faith.
Definitely. And there's a lot of positives to Christianity as well. I feel like there's a lot of community and support in Christianity for, I look at San Diego, right? It's a really big city. A lot of people are like transient. They've come from another place.
Yes.
And so church is where a lot of people find the place where they belong. It's where they find their friends. It's where they find their chosen family. And so there's benefits to that. And I do think that like you're saying, having faith is such a huge part of life. It really does help get through things that are hard, give gratitude when things are great. And so while we are going to be touching on some of the things that have come up for us that we feel like it is problematic, I just want to put it out there that I do respect your faith. I have walked the path alongside of you probably for a while. And that I do see that there's a lot of really beneficial things to going to church, to your belief systems. A lot of good can come of it. And a lot of it is outdated, and a lot of it can be kind of like dug up and unearthed a little bit. And maybe let's start asking some questions.
Definitely. And so that was one of the big things that I had a problem with. And Jess and I have been, I mean, we both went to Catholic schools whenever we were younger. In my memory, and correct me if I am wrong, you were always very like, yeah, you were of the path. You didn't mind doing the church thing. I feel like I was more of a rebel in that area where I was like, okay, I'm sorry. Did you just say a virgin had a baby? Okay, come on now. Like, don't, like I just, and because I was a child that had questions, I was made to feel less than a lot. How dare you question these things? How dare you, talk to an adult and try and raise some flags like, excuse me, but this doesn't make sense to me. And I think a lot of children, because we start so young, they start you as a teeny tiny baby saying that as a 3-month-old or less that you have already sinned.
Right. Well, and also one of the things that I have really struggled with is like, especially in Catholic Church, baptism. So many times I have heard people ask about me baptizing my children. And I've heard other people talking about baptizing their children, even as growing up. And the thing that I remember the message being relayed was, if you don't baptize your child, that their soul is going to either stay in purgatory or go to hell, that they will not reach heaven,
right,
if your child is not baptized. I feel like that is playing on every parent's worst nightmare. If I am doing if God forbid something terrible happened to my child, if I did not go through this process and I didn't dedicate this child to God, that they are doomed.
And that is what it's meant to do. It's meant to be a big, scary thing so that you, I mean, I hate to say it like this, but so you fall in line. So that you fall in line and you follow we could get into so much with politics and Christianity.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is, though. It's what it's meant to do. I think that religion as a whole was made as a tool to help keep the masses in check. And overall, there are some good rules that come along with it. Like, don't fuck your neighbor's wife. Don't kill people. Don't steal stuff. But there's so much like wiggle room in those things. Are we talking about the poor people that literally have no other resort other than to swipe a loaf of bread? Or, like now all of a sudden they're going to hell because they were hungry?
Right. I think that like the heaven and hell thing is like one of the most problematic things in my opinion, because it plays on your guilt, it plays on your fear. And one of the main things that even social media or regular media, the news, the things that they use to kind of control large amounts of people is fear. You put things out there that breed fear in somebody, and they are going to, I mean, I don't know, insert whatever they're trying to do here. So whenever this idea of heaven and hell is put in front of people, it's very polarizing. Either you do what we say you're going to do, or you're going to hell.
You can go to this magic place in the sky, surrounded by clouds and lollipops and unicorns. But if you don't do what we say, you are damned to hell, and you're going to burn with, the murderers and anybody that has ever done anything bad ever.
Right.
But what they consider bad is what I take issue with, because I spent so much of my childhood afraid that I was being bad, that I was doing the things that were going to send me to hell. And this has like come up with me into adulthood also. We had talked about it before, that masturbation was bad. I grew up thinking that if I pleasured myself, that I would like wait for the other shoe to drop. If I pleasured myself, I would spend the rest of the day like, what's going to happen that is wrong? I'm going to get in trouble for something bad is going to happen. I'm going to have bad luck. Whatever it was, I would spend the rest of my day terrified that something awful was going to happen.
Right.
Just from masturbation.
Right.
If I had a meltdown moment and I wasn't the best version of myself, and I said something wrong to somebody and I made them upset, I would spend the rest of the day, the week, the month, whatever, punishing myself for being human.
Well, it's conflicting, right? Because they say that you are a sinner, and they say that you have to forgive.
Yes.
Right? And so if we have to forgive, how does that not negate this idea of like being a sinner and going to hell when you do bad things, unless you are saved?
Yes.
And then if you're saved, it's okay if you do bad things. You're just going to have to say some prayers.
7 Hail Marys.
And then it's going to be okay. You can go to heaven again.
So because Christianity, Catholicism, religion in general has so many people, like there's just, I mean, a gazillion people that follow different religions. We're humans and we are flawed, and we're going to make mistakes
Right.
all the time.
Right.
And unfortunately, in these religions, you're not allowed to make mistakes. It's punishable. You're bad. You're wrong. So what do humans do whenever they are in a situation where they're not allowed to make mistakes, but they're humans and they do? They hide it. They have guilt about it. That guilt actually, and this is going to be controversial, and somebody's going to send me a thumb in the mail or something, but some people get off on that. They get off on their guilt. They get off on their shame, and they do it more and more and more.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times I have listened to a true crime podcast that started out in a church.
So I do want to interrupt a little bit here and say that I think that a lot, from my vantage point, it seems like a lot of your position comes from being a young girl in Catholic Church.
Yes.
Now, having gone through my younger years, probably all the way through high school, going to church, I kind of stepped away from the church for a while. And then when I met my husband, he and I started going back to a Catholic church. And, it felt nice. Like you said earlier, I definitely was more open to walking that path. I think that in some ways I was trying to find validation and acceptance within myself.
Yeah.
And I think that naturally I am a very spiritual person. And so I'm realizing now that my connection to God, right? After going through my adolescent years in a church and then being married in a church, and then Dave and I kind of like taking the jump over to a more non-denominational Christian church, I've kind of run a pretty big gamut.
Yeah.
But I didn't find God in a church. I found God in my backyard on a yoga mat.
See, that is the other thing. There was so much guilt about not going to the church.
Right.
You had to show up to the church. You had to be in the community. And I take issue with that because I'm like, I don't need to be in a church to
Right.
have spirituality or to pray to God or to, whatever it is that I believe. I can do that by myself.
Right.
If he, in quotes, is everywhere, then why do I need to be inside of a church?
Yeah, and I don't think that you do. But I do think, though, I want to kind of go back a little bit to what we were talking about before. I do kind of want to say that whenever I was in the non-denominational Christian church here in San Diego, is called The Rock. I do really feel like that was more of a safe space by comparison to what I grew up with in a Catholic church. It was definitely more like come as you are. It was definitely more we all make mistakes. One of the pastors there would openly talk about his cocaine addiction that he had in his life.
I love that.
Yeah. And so he is very real, and one of the benefits, I think, of more of this non-denominational Christian church is that they are growing with the times. Like Catholicism, I feel like it's a very historical religion. It's a very
old school.
old religion, and the practices and the ceremonies and the whole thing is just very old.
Listen, nobody with arthritis can go to a Catholic church,
That is-
okay?
that
It's
is
like
very
sit,
true.
stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel.
That's very true. And not that I'm saying that there aren't things that don't cross over into the Christian space or this more new age Christianity.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there's been many improvements. And I do feel like, again, like I said, there's things that aren't great.
Yeah.
But there are things that I feel like do offer a wider perspective and a wider lens for people to be themselves and have a history and have a past and not be guilt-ridden or shamed or told that you're a terrible person and you're going to go to hell. Yes, they still tell you that you need to give your life to God and you need to pray and you need to tithe and you need to, do all the things that a quote-unquote good Christian does. But I feel like the guilt is definitely directly correlated with Catholicism.
That good old Catholic guilt. And they wonder why, Catholic schoolgirls go wild whenever they turn, 18 or
Right.
whatever it is. They're like, we're fucking free.
Right. But they're not because they feel guilty. And the second that they go and
So
have a first
guilty.
sexual partner that they are not married to, they feel like all the shame surrounding their sexuality. Maybe you decide to just go for it, right? And have multiple sexual partners and
I went
explore
for it.
your sexuality, right? Even though you went for it and you're at this point where you are now, that carried with you throughout your 20s, I'm sure.
It still does. Unfortunately, like there are so many times where I will be beating myself up for something and then I'm like, wait a minute. This is directly related to, growing
Having been.
up in a Catholic school or the religion. But I try and be cognitive of it. I try to be aware of it. And sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. But that whole thing with having to go to church to do things, I felt really guilty for a long time because I wouldn't go to church.
Right.
I didn't want to wake up at 6 a.m. on a fucking Sunday and make myself look pretty and like fucking dress up and
Yeah.
go to church.
I feel like my memories of going to church as a child were like all like
It was like a fashion
we
show.
would wake up in the morning. It would be like everybody's mad and angry because you're trying to get ready and you're trying to get out the door on time and we're late and we're all fighting and arguing in the car. And then we show up at church and we're like, hello, we're the picture perfect family.
Happy family.
And we're dressed from head to toe looking lovely. And
Look at our Easter hats.
And we're going for donuts after this.
Yes. Mother, could I get a chocolate cream?
Meanwhile, we're like laughing and giggling in the pew, and she's got us by the back of the neck hairs,
my
and she's
God.
like, shut up, through the teeth, right?
Giving us the fucking evil. Do you remember being in church and we could not stop laughing? We were laughing so hard, and Mom was just glaring at us, but her
Right.
glare
Would
made
make us laugh harder.
even
I could see her like, don't embarrass me.
And all I could think was, fuck, we're getting beat after this.
Getting my ass beat when I walk out of this church.
But it was funny because, yes, that's how it was. It was anger, resistance,
Chaos.
chaos beforehand. You know, the hour that we were in church, we were the blissful,
Good
perfect
little soldiers.
family. And then we would leave church and it was back to chaos, anger. Like, I don't remember who Mom said it to. Sorry, Mom, for throwing you under the bus. But she called somebody a motherfucker on her way out of church.
The windows start shaking. The stained glass is breaking.
It was the funniest thing in the world to me. Like, I wish I could remember who it was. It was probably some bitchy lady that was at church.
Probably Fred.
It might have been Fred. Who knows? But like for her, like we were walking out of, like no sooner did she step her big toe off the stair.
Yep.
She was like, motherfucker.
That's great.
Oh, it was so good. But I do think there is a reason that they tell you that you have to go to church, because church is a business
Well, sure. Yeah.
and they need people, they need asses in those seats when they pass around that donation box. You know, they need to make sure that they're getting the donations. And believe me, I get it. Like, keep the lights on, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, church is a business, a tax-free business.
I also think that, so I'm going to, again, direct this to like my experience in this like Christian church, not the Catholic church, because that's where I went as an adult.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't like my mom made me go there. I chose to go there. And they did do a lot of work in the community. And I knew that when I gave money to the church that it was going to good places. However, I believe that there is science and studies behind when you get people to tithe, when you get people to invest their money, there is a stronger loyalty
Totally.
there.
100%. You're invested.
You are invested, and this is your church now. You have put your money there. But do you know that the required, we'll say, amount of tithing is 10% of your income? There's like an actual figure of how much you're supposed to donate. And like for me, like, I don't know, in my early 30s, if I saw people passing around the tray, tossing in ones and twos,
Yeah.
and I thought I was doing a really good job by tossing in a 20. But I'm like, that's definitely not 10% of my income.
No. And
That's a lot of money.
I just, it feels like, and again, this is so much childhood trauma of my own in the church, but I'm like, I don't need to pay to pray.
You don't need to pay to pray. You definitely don't need to pay to pray. Again, the lights on, the people who are leading the church, the space, the community outreach, all of those things. Yes. I do understand why money is involved in a church, but again, it is a business. And when there is business, there are bottom lines, there are numbers you're trying to reach. And who are the people that are running this business.
Yeah.
It is a human. It is man, and man is flawed. And whenever you have a person that is the pastor, right? And you are the leader, and you are, I guess, in some regard, like kind of idolized, and
Yeah.
you're like church famous.
Well, that has to be like a fucking rock star high.
Right. And so when there's money involved, when there's power involved, when there's adoration involved, ego is involved.
100%.
And you cannot, as much as you can try to keep your church or your religion innocent and all about your relationship with God, it's impossible whenever man is involved, because a man cannot be trusted. We're sinners, remember?
We're sinners, and we all have ego.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way that you can, and don't think for a second that, Father whoever isn't competing with Father Jack Stone over in the next community. They are also kind of put against each other.
In a sense of like, this church is going to be shut down if you don't have more parishioners, right? And so there is like a competition almost to have people in your church versus another church.
Absolutely. And I'll never forget. Do you remember when Mom got a bill in the mail from our priest?
I mean, you know my brain, Dana. Come on.
Okay. Mom, correct me if I'm wrong. Call into the show.
Caller, what is your question?
She got a bill in the mail from our priest when we were, I don't know if we were in CCD or whatever. I think we were semi older at this point, because she wasn't donating enough
Right.
every week.
And now our mom was a single mother. She was paying tuition for 2 children to be in a private Catholic school.
Yes.
And they are sending her a bill because she did not donate enough money.
She was not pulling her weight. She wasn't donating enough money. And I'm like, well, if she walked into that church and donated 50 cents, that should be good enough.
Well, let's also talk about like this part of the Bible, right? That talks about like the one who gives the person whose donation is most valued isn't the one that gives the most. It's the one who has the least and still gives of what they can.
Yes. And I was going into the Bible with that because didn't Jesus like wash the feet of the poor?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that like he didn't go to the poor and say, I washed your feet, now give me $20. I mean, it wouldn't have been $20 back then, but you know what I mean. It was stuff like that really, I want to say it hurt me.
It's like internal red flags as like a youngin, like from what I'm understanding from you, it was like that part of your brain was like, ding, this doesn't feel right.
But I wanted to believe. I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be the good little Catholic schoolgirl that my mom so desperately wanted me to be. I just wasn't. And I had so much guilt over that I questioned the, Virgin Mary having a baby. I'm like, Joseph, come on, bro. Did we not have questions for her? Because that feels, I feel like I could make up that story too. Nobody's going to believe me.
No one's going to believe you.
No.
Right.
Or, Jesus died. He's crucified.
Right. In a horrific, terrible, horrible way.
Horrific way. And they just like show him on the cross to all the little kids just bleeding out. But don't worry, because 3 days later, he rises. He's good as new.
Right.
Zombie Jesus. He's
Right.
good as new. And it was almost like a Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy to me, where I was like, why are you feeding me this line of bullshit? That makes no sense. That is not, like, you cannot prove that with science unless he just had a very slow heartbeat. I felt like.
I mean, I don't know. People die and come back to life.
Sure. But
They're on ventilators and like life support.
I mean, there are definitely the stories of the women that they're getting ready to bury, and then all of a sudden, they used to put bells in coffins because they would accidentally bury alive people all the time.
I did not know that, and that's terrifying.
Swear to God, they would ring the bell inside the coffin if they woke up from...
What?
Yeah. Yes.
That is wild.
It is a true thing, a real story. So, like, sure, maybe that is something that happened with Zombie Jesus. Maybe he wasn't actually all the way dead. Maybe he was, that Princess Bride scenario where he was just mostly dead.
Mostly dead. Yes. Well, I want to remain respectful. Sure. And leave this in or take it out. But I think that using terminology like zombie Jesus could be triggering for a lot of people.
It could. And I do use that terminology as a like comedic crutch for me.
Sure.
Because honestly, I don't sometimes feel like I would get... My friends don't get the respect that they deserve from certain things in religions because they're gay. Or so you're right. I'm not being the most respectful that I could be in that scenario. And it's because I'm jaded.
I get that. So because you brought up your gay friends, I think this is like a good segue. My husband and I used to go to church together every Sunday with the girls. And I will tell you, it was a very reminiscent of me growing up and there being all of this chaos to get to church and be there on time. And I'm mad at Dave because I'm the only one getting the kids ready and I need to do their hair and I need blah, 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 right?
So much.
And so around COVID, Dave and I stopped going to church, as many people did. And, there was a lot of online church and things like that, but it just didn't happen. And also simultaneously, I was on a very, I was on the path of self-discovery. I was on the path of understanding my own spirituality. And so church kind of fell out for me.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily have any disdain towards it, but it fell out.
Yeah.
And then time kind of went on. And just recently, my husband started going back to church.
Yeah.
And we've had some conversations about it. And there were times where he would take my kids to church or they would want to go. Jordan usually doesn't want to go. Shay's usually pretty interested. She's down for the goldfish.
She wants to sing too.
Yeah. Well, she goes in like the little, like the classrooms, right? And she wants to color and eat snacks.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't blame her.
That doesn't suck.
And she also loves to sing. But, within my own marriage, I found us kind of being in conflict. And the reason is that I said, Dave, there's just so many problematic things for me when we go there. I said, our daughter's best friend has 2 moms.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to put our children, our neighbors, are a lesbian couple. A very close friend of mine, again, is a lesbian. And I don't ever want to put my children in a situation where they are at church or talking to church friends and somebody give them this idea that her bestie's family is wrong in any way.
Yes.
And so whenever I say stuff like this to my husband, he said to me, well, anytime they bring up like homophobia or anything that has to do with the gay community, I mean, I will just get up and walk out. I'm like, well, isn't that a privilege?
Yeah.
Right. And again, like with all due respect to my husband, sometimes when you are the straight white male and you are at the top of the food chain, it's really easy to just pick and choose what works for you and what doesn't. But when you are the person who's being targeted,
yes,
it's not that easy. And I stand for a lot of people who are targeted by the church.
Yes.
I have people who are close to me who have had abortions.
Mm-hmm.
I myself, at one point in my life, was faced with a decision if I was going to keep a pregnancy or have an abortion.
Yeah.
And I remember praying, please make the decision for me.
Yeah.
Please make the decision for me. That's all I wanted, was to not have to make this choice. And call it God, call it universe, call it creator, divine energy, whatever fits with you. I had a miscarriage. And I was very grateful for that. And
Call
even
it a
though I
woman's
was
body that sometimes goes through things like that.
right. And so I was very grateful in that moment that I had a miscarriage, but at the same time, I was incredibly sad. And I think about the women who have had to make an impossible choice to have an abortion. And when they walk out of that clinic and there are people of a certain religion standing there shaming them, I have a really, really hard time with that. My children are adopted. If you think for a second that I am not grateful that their birth mother chose adoption over abortion, hands down, 100%, I am so grateful she made that difficult decision.
Yeah.
And I understand that is either way you cut it, that's a lifelong decision that you have to make.
It is.
And so when I talk to my husband about these things within the church, patriarchy being one of them, homophobia being another one, politicizing abortion being another one, I just have to say to him, you are of the echelon of people who get to pick and choose.
That is a great word.
It really is. But I'm not. I'm a woman, and there is patriarchy layered upon layered upon layered in most religions. I'm not even going to identify this to Christianity, but in most religions. And I feel like it's just does not stand within my moral compass as a mother, as a parent, to put my children in a place where they could possibly be told that somebody that they love is doing something wrong based on the way that they were created.
So that's definitely another biggie for me. I think that religion, Christianity, all of it could be so good if they led with love.
Right.
If you are the accepting people, if you let people be who they are, whether they were born that way or not, it does not have anything to do with you. There's so much control, such a control issue. And I just think that religion was, if you're using it in the way that they are selling it, that it's a good thing. It's you're supposed to love people, love thy neighbor, accept people whenever they're different than you. That was a big thing that they preached in our Catholic school was, if a kid is blind, you are still supposed to treat them the same.
But not black.
But not black.
That's different.
Yes. Yeah. But if people are using it in a way that, again, back to the commandments, 10 commandments, great. Yeah, it's a good idea to not do the murder to people. It's a good idea to not sleep with your neighbor's wife or steal his things. It's a good idea to be nice to your parents. But honor thy mother and father as long as they honor you too.
Right.
And so I guess I've always had so many problems with it because it never felt to me like it was full of the love that they were selling me.
Right. And what would it look like if they were to practice what they preach?
Yeah.
Right. So instead of standing outside of an abortion clinic with signs and shaming people, what if a woman walked out after making an incredibly difficult decision and they wrapped her in a blanket and they prayed for her, and they prayed for her grief, and they prayed for the soul of her unborn child.
Yeah.
And they prayed and appreciated and accepted the lessons that this experience has taught not just the mother, but everybody who is with her, surrounding her that day. What if whenever a child is questioning their gender identity or their sexuality, instead of shaming them and their parents and trying to pray the gay away, what if they provided a safe space for this person to go internally and say, you know what? You are loved. Your creator created you perfectly. Everything that you are feeling is okay. What would it look like if the church practiced what it preached?
I would love to see that, because so many people out there would flourish. It would be, I think that it would be beautiful
Agreed.
to watch these people that are otherwise condemned. They have so much to offer. And it is a scientific fact that when you do good for other people, you feel good too.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's the gift that keeps on giving.
it is.
It's rhetorical.
You and think about a single time in your life that you did something for somebody else, and you didn't do it for praise or recognition, or you just did it because it was the right thing to do, or somebody just needed your help. Maybe you weren't even excited to do it. Maybe you were like, fuck, I can't believe I have to do this, but fine.
Fine, I'm going to do it.
And then you walk away and you're like, okay, like just chuck up some karma points for me, because, you know, like I just took off one of those masturbations from childhood.
You're slightly evening out.
One step closer to heaven. But think about how great it feels to serve other people in a way that they feel loved and accepted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's truly what they sell as religion. That's what they tell you that they are all about. It's love and acceptance. And I mean, the Virgin Mary had a baby out of wedlock, right? She wasn't married, right?
She was married to Joseph.
Oh, were they married?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have questions for Joseph, how she ended up pregnant. But like, nobody was condemning her.
Right.
And, you know, like this is a silly point to bring up, but in the Bible, Jesus goes from like baby to like 12 to like 30. Well, don't you think it's probably because he made a few mistakes in those in between times? Because he is a fucking human.
Right. And I think that we all have a journey and we all have a path. And if you're on the path to enlightenment, which I believe that Jesus maybe was a real person that walked the earth and did some really fucking awesome things.
He was a real brown person.
A real brown person. Thank you. Let's just start there. Brown.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe modern day he would be considered a healer, clairvoyant. Like, I don't know. I just feel like he is made out to be this thing that is unattainable.
Maybe modern day, he would be in a homeless encampment because nobody would fucking help him today.
Maybe.
And how often in church, in school, whatever, did you get the lesson of, oh, the guy that looks poor, he comes in and people turned the other way, wouldn't listen, wouldn't pay attention. And then he turns out to be this, deity. Or how often do we get that in those, like, those are the lessons that they preach.
Right.
And nobody today, I shouldn't say nobody, I'm generalizing, but a lot of people still turn away. They're not listening. They're not paying attention. They're not helping.
Right.
And that is like anti-religion to me. Like, that's anti what it's supposed to be.
Well, I think that people who commit their life to God, commit their life to their church, I believe their heart is in the right place. I believe that they want to do good for their families. They want to do good for other people. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And I love that. And I think that so much about faith is believing in something bigger than yourself and bigger than what you are.
And I have faith. I do believe that there is something bigger out there. I do think that, I don't want to say like everything happens for a reason because it's so cliche. But I do think those things.
I do too. And I don't think that there are any. I think this is like a really good segue into like, where are you with your belief systems today? I know that I'm a big reader and I always love to recommend books to people. And a lot of them are on like personal development, spirituality, things like that. And I'm always very cautious on what I'll recommend to you because if they mention God in it, I feel like it could be triggering.
God itself is a trigger word for me. I'm working on it though. It's not God that I have a problem with. It's the personification of God
Same.
that I have a problem with. I don't think that, and this goes back to childhood again. I say he whenever I say God.
I am really working on breaking that, but it is a trigger for me. And one of the reasons that I won't go to church started with the personification of God. And I'm like, God is not a man.
He's not a man.
He's
not a human.
He is not a man.
It is not a human.
Right.
And that is something that, so God is very triggering for me when he is, God damn it, when it is personified. Because I just can't get down with it. I can't.
Yeah, it's a trigger for me too. And I think it's just like another like little point for patriarchy within the religious modality. And I think that when the church wants to recognize how deeply rooted patriarchy is in it, the first thing that they could do for us is stop calling God a he. That is the way that you can support women. Stop calling God a he. God, in my opinion,
God's pronouns are not he, him.
They are not, nor are they she, her.
Yes, agree.
But I believe like when I talk about God and my relationship with God today is the closest, the strongest, the most empowering that it's ever been in my life. But I don't look at God as a man in the sky. I don't look at God as he or her. I look at God as an energy in my heart. And when I hug someone that I really love and my heart just swells with a outpouring of love for this person, that connection is love source energy. That to me is God.
I am feeling everything that you're saying right now because that is also like what I feel when I have a really good meditation. I feel it like when I'm taking a walk and I'm looking at the birds and crunching leaves beneath my feet and I'm smelling the dirt after a fresh rain. I'm saying this all today because it rained today in San Diego. And
hallelujah.
Hallelujah. But like I feel that and I love the way that you just put that love source energy.
That's the way that I have to look at it in order to unbad all of the buildup of religion, not God, religion that has built up in my life. The way that I dismantle that is by understanding what God feels like in my body.
Yeah.
And I do believe that we are all God. We all have that ability to feel that in us.
That source, that energy,
Definitely.
That is us.
That is us. And the same thing that brings tears, the same energy that brings tears to your eyes when you have like a moment of something really beautiful is the exact same energy that makes a bird sing.
Yes.
Isn't that beautiful?
It's so beautiful. And I really encourage you all to sit outside for a minute, just by yourself, go on a walk and feel it, because it's in the trees, it's in the wind, it's in the smells, it's in the everything. And if you are already a religious person, you have been made to know this already, but it hits different whenever you look at it as love, source, energy, rather than the big man in the sky.
Right. Definitely. Something also that comes to mind for me when we talk about man in the sky, I think of heaven, right? And a lot of times I think with religion that heaven and hell is meant to be these places that are like of the afterlife.
Yeah.
And over the last year or so, I've kind of been toying with like, what is my understanding of heaven and hell? And I truly believe that heaven and hell is personal, number one, and it's that of state of mind.
Yeah.
And so heaven and hell isn't a place that you go. Heaven and hell is something that you experience on earth in your mind. And either you are going to live a life of love and acceptance, and you're going to accumulate love and pass on love, or you are going to live in this place of fear in your mind.
Your own personal hell.
Your own personal hell.
I agree with that. I think that people that believe in hell, this is hell. We are living it. It's also heaven. It really depends on your mentality and your choices and how you choose to view things, how you choose to accept things into your life. I just want to like reiterate what you're saying, that choosing to lead with love is so strong. It's so powerful in your life. Like if you choose to see people that are struggling in a way where you have compassion for them, it changes everything. And I'm not saying that you have to go out and give really awful people all your love. That's not what I'm saying at all. But you will see a difference in your life when you choose to lead with love and compassion versus you're a terrible person that's going to hell because you don't live the life that the patriarchy built up in a church.
Which to me is like fear and judgment.
Which is fear and judgment and your own personal hell. It's interesting how that all...
Preach, girl.
Woof. This has been like... This is a heavy episode.
It is. It is.
And I had to throw a couple masturbation jokes in there because I had to lighten the mood a little bit.
I get it. Or get in the mood a little bit. I don't know which one you're trying to do.
I don't know. My husband's really hoping I get into the mood a little bit. We did have premarital sex, though. I'm just going to put that out there.
Sinner.
Yeah. We all are. I'd love to hear anybody else that wants to write in. We are UnBadding@gmail.com. This, again, is a conversation. And I think it's very clear that she's the understanding one and that I am the jaded one. And I'm trying. So I do have an open heart and an open mind and would love to hear different perspectives. Because I am aware that my perspective is not the only one.
Yeah. And I also think that like we're all working through stuff together, right? That's the whole point of the show. That's what we're doing here. So like, you're at a different place.
I am.
I'm at a different place. And I think that through conversation, through understanding, through love, through compassion is where we find an understanding for one another and where we work through the things that have built up and caused the ick inside.
Yeah, I think I need a few more sessions of therapy regarding this. Well, guys, thank you again for hanging out with us for another week here on UnBadding. And before we go, everybody, please join me. We're about to sing. Ready?
No, you're not.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to
Aw.
you. So bad. Happy birthday.
I love it.
Dear Jessie.
Woohoo.
Happy birthday to you.
Aw, thank you.
You're
I love
welcome.
you.
Happy 40th.
Oh, yeah.
It's the best decade yet.
Yay.
You'll see.
I will see. I'm ready for it.
Let's go.
And as always, we're unbatting, baby.
woo woo.
UnBadding, UnBadding, we're UnBadding, baby. We're on a journey, baby. We're UnBadding, baby. We're UnBadding.